I wasn't asking much from Pacific Rim Harder, I just knew what I didn't want, namely a repeat of last year's Power Rangers movie which somehow managed to make the premise of giant robots punching giant monsters in the face dull. Because on the list of premises that should be nearly impossible to mess up, this has got to be pretty near the top. Hasn't it? Anyway, 10 years have passed since the end of the first Pacific Rim and Earth is still picking up the pieces from the first film. After all, what do you do with skyscraper-sized robots when there aren't any skyscraper-sized monsters for them to engage in diplomatic relations with? How would the Earth cope with every country trying to make their own? Would this lead to increased global stability or chaos? What happens when crime bosses and eccentric billionaires try to make their own? A chance to examine a world that lives on a knife edge, never knowing when or if the nightmares will return to shatter what little of the human race we've managed to put back together. And sorry, I was thinking of the film that this was going to be back when Guillermo del Toro was still going to direct, before he wandered off to win every award under the sun with The Shape of Water, leaving this film in the hands of a man who had never directed a film before. And in other circumstances, I might have been more forgiving of a first-time film director. If, say, this was some $5 to $10 million film that no one is going to care about or remember in the next few days. Instead, this is a huge $150 million blockbuster film that no one's going to remember in a few days. Now, whilst this isn't as bad as Power Rangers, it's nowhere near as good as the original film in so many ways. Some small, some large, all of them fixable with a few script rewrites and 10 minutes chopped off the runtime. I'll start with the human-sized issues, of which there are way too many. The film has the same issues as some 80s cartoons I used to watch, in that someone somewhere decided that we need to fill this film with children who were needed for paper-thin plot reasons and could have done with being completely removed from the film and replaced with adults if they were needed at all. During the first film, I could have understood the desperate need for essentially child soldiers. Humanity was losing the war and was desperate for pilots, but now, after 10 years of peace? No. Also, it's painfully obvious that Scott Eastwood, looking more and more like a computer's idea of what a leading man should look like before printing one out, is playing Riley Beckett's character from the first movie after a hurried rewrite because Charlie Hunnam decided to make King Arthur's Legends of the Board instead, for reasons known only to him. He's paired up with John Boyega as the unmentioned son of Idris Elba from the first film, and as much as I like Boyega, he's no Idris Elba. He's functional at best and wooden at worst. It fails to have charisma with pretty much anyone, and well, let's just say he's done nothing to dissuade me of the belief that Daisy Ridley is the Star Wars breakout, and 10 years from now Boyega will be starring in Attack the Block 2, Attack Harder. But after spending way too long establishing human characters, 75% of whom could have been safely condemned to the editing room floor, we move on to the monster fights, which is why I paid extra to see this film in IMAX. And much like the first film, they are worth the price of admission. It's constantly driven home to us how huge these things are, and the battles reflect that. These robots are huge and slow moving, and they seriously pack a punch. When fighting the kaiju, this film comes alive and puts the dopiest smile on my face that you ever did see. Although I did find it slightly annoying that these insanely complicated huge robots can seemingly be fixed in less time than it took my garage to do my car's MOT. This isn't some 42-minute long TV show, it's a 2-hour long film and can take its time, showing that sometimes these robots have to be sent out half-patched because there isn't time to do a proper repair job. Can, but doesn't. I did like some aspects of the film's plot, showing how the Jaegers are at risk of being replaced by drone versions, which placed the human pilots at no risk and could have led to an interesting debate about drones being used over directly human-controlled Jaegers, but no such luck. The film really gets going after a slightly dull first 45 minutes, and once it does hit its stride, it really does get and keep going. Except it's got the same issue that Fast and Furious 8 had, in that it showed everything in its trailer, meaning that moments that should have had me marvelling in awe left me feeling slightly bored and wondering, well, what else do you got? The film did make me chuckle at a few points, and thankfully no one made any Joss Whedon-style quips, instead showing professionals doing their jobs in a professional manner and showing off their wonderful machines which seem to have an endless supply of amusing and visually impressive weaponry. But as I was sitting there with my popcorn and coke, I realised that something wasn't quite clicking for me. Something wasn't quite right with the fight scenes, and then, as the credits started running, no post-credit scene, this isn't a Marvel film, I realised what it was. The first film had this amazing piece of music that played during the fights, all big and triumphant, designed to put my inner 8-year-old in control. For some unknown reason, it was banished to the end credits. Imagine a James Bond film without the theme when you see my issue. Also, the film misses out the little touches that made this seem like a world that was lived in and had been at war for years. Dented armour, scratches on the Jaeger, food shortages, worries about resources, small and easy things to overlook that could have been fixed very easily but weren't for some reason. And That's not including the fact that, well, I've seen robots fight monsters in the first film. And whilst there are some cool Jaeger v Jaeger fights in this one, I would have liked some more variety in the fights. There was nothing here that made me smile like that moment in the first film where Gypsy Danger walked down a street carrying an oil tanker destined to be used as a baseball bat as the music soared and my inner 8-year-old died and went to heaven. Second verse, not as good as the first is what I'm trying to get at. Get a better composer. Scrap most of the human characters and bring in a new one who can hold a candle to Elba. Have the main characters have some chemistry, shave 10 minutes off the runtime, and this could be a much, much better film. Oh, and drop all this nonsense about becoming a Star Wars level franchise with spin-offs and one-shots. You were an awesome film, followed by an average film and a third film to close you out. Not every film has to become a franchise, you know. And no, crossing over into the Monsterverse is not going to help. This is an if nothing else film. If nothing else is on, yeah, check this out. Otherwise, just don't bother. And look out for this in my most disappointing list at the end of the year. But what do you guys think? And what is your favourite monster movie? Comment below, let me know. I'm Daniel, it's been a dunking. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe.